Fun fact, YouTube family, you won't get bad karma from airing your grievances. We get tripped up on this whole thing of feeling shame around feeling emotions bubble up and rise to the surface connected to something that erupted in our lives, particularly connected to a person or a group or an institution, right? And there is a difference between airing your grievances and feeding insidious gossip. And so that's what we're going to explore in this video, in addition to a bunch of juicy things such as the distinction between constructive venting and toxic gossip, which is a really important distinction here. How community evolution actually relies upon open communication and shared processing, which sometimes gets labeled as gossiping, but when in actuality it's airing a process, it's airing grievances, it's talking about a thing, right? We're going to speak about how holding space for others' nuances and co-processing is a really valuable skill, and we're going to talk about a few pointers of how to actually do that constructively without feeding toxic gossip. We're going to speak about how to actually select trustworthy people in your inner circle. This could be a whole big thing, but we're going to touch on it because it is important to name. We're going to speak briefly about the whole complex behind projections and the fear of airing grievances, linking that to some cultural conditioning around the whole shaming of anger and the whole thing there, right? And then that leads us on to speak about the power of anger and passion and its link into how we stand in the world, how we own our place in this world. And then standing up to immature and destructive individuals is necessary for strong communities, right? So you're not a people pleaser, so you're not just getting walked over. That ain't healthy. So really, airing your grievances fosters clarity. It allows you to process your emotions so they don't get stuck in your system, which causes further imbalances and which can even lead to actual dis-ease in the body, right? Manifesting as physical illness. Same as inauthenticity. Over time, inauthenticity can actually manifest as physical illness. And how really in a safe place, like you aren't going to air your grievances to just anybody, right? But in a safe space, airing your grievances can really lead to massive positive transformation, not just for you, but also for the person who's listening, right? Holding space for that process. It's a bonding process, okay? So a lot of really juicy topics to dive into here, and one that I really feel is so necessary to speak about, okay, because we're in such a black and white time where things are so quickly demonized, or we're told this is wrong and this is right. And if there's one big thing that is emerging as a theme on this channel, it is anti-black and white thinking. Okay, so let's begin with why we really must air our grievances. I'm sure you've experienced it, where if you suppress a thing, and you keep suppressing the thing, and you try to squish those emotions down and compress them into this tiny marble inside your body, hoping, wishing that it would just disappear. And how in actuality, this creates internalized resentment, leading to emotional stagnation and even potential, later down in the track, physical illness. They found through a number of years, a number of studies, all the things, that a lot of the time, not every time, right, but a lot of the time, if not most of the time, this whole cancer epidemic that we're experiencing in this time here and now is not just a physically isolated thing. It's because of stuck up stress and emotions held in the system and not released. This is not to fear porn. This is simply just information that when I found out about it was extremely useful, especially because of my own health journey and really having to accept head on, very intimately, like with my own body, that it was not enough just to think of this this imbalance in my system, this, well, you could call it an illness, but it's not really that. It's mainly just this imbalance. I couldn't just think of it as a physical thing because nothing was shifting. I had to go to the emotional roots. Okay. So by sharing our grievances, we release this pent-up energy, and this gives space for clearer thinking and emotional freedom and emotional maturity, because we learn in that process of airing our grievances when we slip into, whoa, I really sound like a victim right now, or whoa, I'm kind of slipping into persecutor right now, or whoa, I'm really looking for a rescuer right now. And we get that feedback when we start going through that process. When we try to figure everything out on our own, that can actually be a sign of some kind of independence as trauma response, where we didn't feel safe to ask for help, or we were somehow shamed for looking for guidance or clarity or help, or some situation led to us believing that we just needed to do it all alone. Probably because our parents also received that conditioning, and their parents, and so on, right? So it's a systemic thing a lot of the time. It's when we hide our grievances that they can become toxic over time, when they can grow in our minds and fester in the pit of our stomachs, or create defenses around our hearts, or stagnation in our lungs, right? That they start to impact negatively our relationships with life and our self-perception, because we can get spiraled into this like false process of, or this false story that we're entirely the bad one, or we just get kind of narrow-minded, right? We don't get to see it as part of a broader, from a broader perspective, and that's a massive cost. I know for myself, when I sink into this, I need to figure it out all alone. It's not safe to share this. I'm going to get persecuted if I say this, or the universe will punish me if I say this or air this out. I'm not allowed to be angry. It's too much. It's too heavy. It's too violent. It's too rageful. It's too fiery, whatever it is. These reasons feel real in that moment. It actually, in that moment, feels like if I air this out, I'm going to get persecuted. And so we hold space for ourselves with compassion, knowing that at some point in our ancestry, it was a very real circumstance that people who spoke out were literally persecuted or sent to death, right? So this lives and breathes through us epigenetically, in our blood, in our bone. So kindness, compassion, but let us not bypass, and we do have to face that this is still present in our system, so we need to do something about it. There is a difference between holding space for venting for self or other and toxic gossip. There is. Constructive venting is the process where we can even hold space for others, or trusted allies and friends can hold space for us, without judgment, without trying to rescue, without trying to fix, allowing us to release frustrations, to clear misunderstandings, and to gain insight into our process. Even earlier today, I was going through a process where I realized I was trying to compress this thing. I was convincing myself that I didn't need to speak about it. And it only dawned on me as it came to the surface that this was lingering in my field like a huge dark cloud. And then I was getting irritable and triggered, and I was just angry, but I didn't know why. Until this incident came up through me, and I realized, oh, I was actually just really angry about the situation that came up, and I wasn't voicing it because I feared that if I spoke about this, which was connected to one other person, that I would be persecuted by the universe, right? But it wasn't me. And as I started airing this, there was no malintent. It was simply, wow, I feel so upset. I feel so angry. I feel so betrayed. I feel really angry at this person. Like I feel like they didn't see me and I just feel pissed off, right? I'm not wishing ill of this person. I'm not cursing this person. I'm simply being present, and I was finally being present with what was alive in my system, this burning in my heart, this contraction in my gut, right? This black haze around my head. Do you have a feel for this difference? I'm going to explicate it a little bit more concisely in just a second, but I do want to give that space for you to start to feel into, if you can place, yeah, there is a difference between me releasing a thing and me like actively adding to the thing and spreading more negativity, right? A big thing in our time is like the emotional bypass of I need to be a good person so I can't experience heavier emotions. Huge bypass, huge love and light bypass, okay? There is no love and there is no light without the recognition of the shadow, of the darkness. Not necessarily acting upon the seeds of darkness or evil within us, because as within, so without, there ain't no evil outside without there being the seeds of evil within, right? But anyway, huge thing. So just furthering that, insidious gossip, toxic gossip. This is really motivated as well by a need to get something out, though it's fueled a little bit differently. It's framed a little bit differently. There can be anger, there can be jealousy, but the intent isn't just to process the emotions and move them through. There's often an intent to want to bring someone down, want to see them fail or get hurt, or you want to see something bad happen to them, right? And it often gets distorted or exaggerated, right? You're like building up the story, or you're painting it in a more exaggerated way to put you into the victim role even more, them in the perpetrator role even more, right? And this doesn't actually relieve the system. It's like you're just adding fuel to the fire. But instead of that fuel being, you know, nice sticks that have been lying on the forest floor for a little while, you're like putting in plastic into that fire. And the smoke that comes out is like, whoa, I don't want to breathe that, right? There's a difference. And so holding space for venting is a super sacred process. Just like how there's a difference between really destructive, vicious, malicious anger and sacred rage, right? True venting is part of our healing process. True venting is the difference between that energy being able to move through your system or it getting stuck and creating more imbalances in your body. Even just the other day, I was reading an article about a man who had inflamed, swollen lymph nodes for 2.5 years. And he went to all the doctors, all the things, paid all this money. And it wasn't until he started processing his emotions connected to a particular theme that the lymph nodes reduced in size and went back to normal. Hello, metaphysical anatomy, it's a thing. But that's beyond the scope of this video for today. So on the other hand, again, just to reinforce that point, toxic gossip harms both us, because we're spreading poisonous seeds and we're doing harm to ourselves and our heart and our soul, because our soul wants us to be liberated from the crap, for sure. But it doesn't want us to wish ill of another person just because we're angry at them and we feel upset. And it also is toxic for the listener because, right, they're breathing in the smoke of the plastic burning in the fire, right? Whew. Big process. So I have a symbol from the Book of Symbols, and it is the tongue. Check out that photo. So the tongue, our sword. A really quick quote here for you. It is through speech that the tongue reveals its fateful power to destroy or create. I'm going to say that again. It is through speech that the tongue reveals its fateful power to destroy or create. We are co-creators and we are co-destroyers. There is a difference, right? I'm just going to illustrate this more clearly because I imagine it can still be a little bit subtle, the difference that I'm talking about here. Healthy venting doesn't have to be pleasant, like, oh, I'm just upset and it's okay. Healthy venting can be like, I literally need a pillow and I'm going to scream in it. Healthy venting can be like, what a bitch. I feel so betrayed. F her, right? Toxic gossip, on the other hand, it's like, I wish that they would experience X bad thing and X bad thing would happen to them because F them. Ooh, that's a little more malicious. That's shifting from I feel this pent up rage in my system because I feel so betrayed by this process, and I'm actually like low-key cursing that person, right? One of them is like releasing like the pressure coming out of the pressure cooker, like psh, and another one is like you are literally throwing a spear at their head. Is that clear enough? And, compassion, this sometimes can be a difficult process to be able to cultivate the willpower to check ourselves. And that's why it's really useful to have the trusted allies around us who can bring more of that third-party outsider perspective, which is less involved, right? So they can help you to check out parts of you that are maybe going into toxic gossip, right? We all have blind spots. That's okay. This is not a you have to be perfect lecture. Not at all, okay? Not at all. So I want to move on to speaking about briefly the evolutionary benefits of this healthy venting. So there's a really epic book called Sex at Dawn, which speaks about the prehistoric foundations of our mating processes. Speaking about, the difference between a society framed around the engagement and the behavior of chimpanzees, which are more testosterone fueled. There's more like separation and violence, so to speak, in that with the chimpanzees versus the what are they called again? It starts with a B, and it's the name of a musician. I can't think of it right now. But anyway, these guys, super different, like very even polyamorous, like they're just connecting, they're sharing, they're mating with each other, there's less violence, there's way less anger between them all, and there's just a sense of like, okay, we can process heavy emotions through communicating, through moving through energy, and through connecting. But anyway, the point of this book reference right now is that there was this whole thing about social sharing is part of the evolutionary process. That this capacity to move intense energy between or co-processing that what served an evolutionary purpose, helping establish communal norms, helping recognize who can be trusted, right? And so just like sexual relationships shape social bonds and hierarchies even, so does the exchange of information through conversation. And so healthy gossip, I don't like pairing gossip with that, healthy venting, healthy airing of grievances evolved as a tool for communal survival, making us aware of threats, right? Helping us discern when there's some toxicity that's trying to move through the collective, and actually we can do something about that so it doesn't tear us apart. And thereby establishing communal cohesion, like we're synced, we can co-process something. There's not this conquer and divide kind of energy going on. And even through family constellations, the root of family constellations as a modality mainly came from Bert Hellinger's, who is the founder of this modality, time spent with the Zulu tribes And the way that these people process stuff that came up as part of the tribe was like tribal council kind of thing. Like the whole group came together, and the people who were, the main characters, so to speak, of this drama, of this rupture, were surrounded and held by the group. And it was not just this like backstabbing behind closed doors kind of gossipy thing. It was witnessed and held by the group. And so then it could get aired, and there could be consequences employed if that was necessary, right? Because also healthy shame. Like if you did a thing which was objectively kind of messed up, then yeah, I mean, you might need to like reconcile that somehow with some action. So the group dynamic is huge. And I just feel that so much of that is, do we have that? Like so much of the way that we've been conditioned to process heaviness is it's behind closed doors. We need to do it alone. We don't show that face to the public, or, I mean, kind of, yeah, you don't want to, because do that with your trusted allies. But there's a sense of there's this need to like hide the thing. For what? To maintain some sort of image of peace. But that's the bypass, right? Like if there is literally a fire going on in the house, which is your body, it's a massive bypass to just be like, oh, but it's okay. Like if I just smile about it, then the fire will go out. Yeah. Good luck with that. Okay. So a few key tips on how to hold space for someone venting without becoming the rescuer, right? So this is really about active listening, without judgment, without unsolicited advice. The goal isn't to fix the other person, but to offer a safe container for release. And let's say it's you who's wanting to vent. You can also, with this awareness, ask a trusted friend and ally if they are available for you to air something. And they can just be, you can explicate that you're not looking necessarily for fixing, you're not necessarily looking for advice, but you just need a sounding board to air this out. And are they available for that? If you are looking for advice, then explicate that. I'm looking for advice, but know that I don't want to be rescued, but I feel like I'm a bit entangled and I'm looking for a different perspective. Can we do this? Okay, and if they say no, they're not available, all good. Maybe you have another pal, or you can go to some journaling, or you can go to a trusted therapist, right? Like there are different options. So anyway, let's say you're the one holding space. You can, without fixing, so that the other person still feels heard, there's a little bit of healthy mirroring that's required of being like, yeah, I really hear this point, and you can summarize this key point that they've said. Or, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Like, wow, I'm here for you. I feel you, right? You're not being like, oh my God, poor you, like we need to do this. Like, no. Don't enable victimhood. If they sink into victim, don't be an enabler of that, because that's disempowering them and you. And if you love them, you don't want to disempower them, and you don't want to disempower yourself, right? So, active listening. I'm here for you. I understand. Whoa, okay, I really hear that this has come up. You can ask clarifying questions to encourage deeper processing. And there's no script for this. This is a highly intuitive thing, and it will come to you in that moment if you approach it with that space of not rescuing, but seeking clarity. Maybe there's some holes there which you're noticing, and you can ask a question because you're genuinely curious and you don't feel like the whole story's been painted out. You can ask a question for deeper processing. And then refrain from shifting the focus to yourself, right? A lot of the time, I know for myself, I would think that they would feel more seen or heard if I was sharing how in my life a similar thing had happened. And sometimes, yeah, that's received really well. But other times that feels like you're shifting the focus away from this vulnerable process that they've decided to open up and share with you and moving it towards yourself. So know that there's a subtle fine line there and case by case, right? But yeah, that the whole thing of active listening is it's the space for them to feel heard and seen without judgment. And so flipping the script there, if you are the one in that position and someone is holding space for you, that's super important. Like, it's tender to open this stuff up. It's not comfortable. Those fears of persecution or shaming or whatever it is may still come up. And so we're in a sensitive position there. We might misunderstand someone else's reactions if they, spin it to themselves or whatever. So kindness, compassion, right? But useful things to know. And for both sides, it's really important that we can start to recognize when there is healthy venting instead of merely just spreading toxicity. And in that case, if we can check ourselves, then we can redirect the conversation respectfully if we realize that it's starting to turn destructive, or if that trusted ally is maybe informed, like, hey, I don't know if you'll be able to pick this, but I really don't want this to spin into me just toxically gossiping. So if I do go there, like, you have full permission to call me out, right? So it's a co-created process. It can be. Because we all have blind spots, right? And so this is, again, to reinforce the importance of that collective co-processing, so we don't feel so alone and we don't get caught up in false stories by just trying to figure it out all by ourselves. And that's not to say that sometimes we need to do the work, right? We need to go within and ask ourselves the important questions of, like, why am I feeling this angry? What is this reminding me of? Is this connected to something else? Going a little bit deeper and doing that inner work, and then going to seek further support. So I invite you right here, right now, to take a deep breath, sigh out, and I invite you to ask yourself, is there something that has happened recently, or maybe even not so recently, with someone or a group of people or an institution that really left a sour taste in your mouth? Something that made you feel really angry, something that made you feel like you weren't understood, you were misunderstood, and that just left this feeling of maybe betrayal or just rage, right? I want you, if it feels available for you, if you feel comfortable to do that, you don't have to, but I invite you to just try to connect in with that memory, even if it's fresh or not so fresh. Maybe it's like kind of uncomfortable, and that's okay. I now invite you to just think about, tune in to an area of your body that might be flaring up in some way or activated in some way, connected to this memory and the emotions associated with this memory. Is there any heat in your belly, contraction in your heart, tension in your head, burdening, like heaviness on your shoulders, a sort of aching in your lower back? Like, where is that? Where is that in your body? Does that energy feel big? Does it feel small? Does it have a density to it, a lightness to it, a color to it, a shape to it? Or just a general feeling? And when you've connected in with that feeling in your body, I invite you to sense if there's a story around this feeling. A story might be, this is too intense for me to feel, or this is too intense for me to share or talk about, or I don't even know what to do with this, or if I possibly open this up, I fear what will come out. And then you might realize I'm afraid of my fear. I'm afraid of my anger. I'm afraid of this rage. Right? No right or wrong here. Just notice. Notice if there's a story around this feeling in your body, connected to a story, connected to emotions, connected to thoughts. And if you feel available, I invite you to ask yourself, if I do feel this, what's the worst thing that could happen? If I feel this rage, what's the worst thing that could happen? And maybe more fears come up. Maybe you have come from an environment where you feeling those uncomfortable emotions led to persecution, okay? And so that's real. Compassion to that. There's no need to deny that. You know, there are very real reasons why we often feel so afraid to air these grievances, to go into these dense, heavier emotions. So again, just notice. Remember to deeply breathe. Good job. Okay. Final little thing to tune into. I want you to ask yourself, is there anyone I know in my inner circle or in my family that I trust enough to air this out? Is there anyone I know in my family or inner circle that I trust enough to air this out with? If there is a yes that comes through, ask who that is. If there is a no that comes through, ask again, right? Because maybe that's a reactive, like, no. And that's the independence as trauma response voicing itself. But if it really is a no, that I don't know anyone who I feel safe to vent this out with, then I invite you, here and now, to imagine someone who isn't necessarily a real person, but imagine the kind of person who you really would feel safe to open up to and air this out with. And imagine this energy, this person, this figure maybe feels very motherly or fatherly or like a really good friend, how you imagine that feels. And I invite you to imagine them coming a little bit closer and giving a big hug to that part of you that feels really wounded and angry and betrayed and afraid to speak up. And maybe you can imagine yourself airing this out with them. And maybe that helps. Or maybe there's a way that feels more true for you, and you can go to journaling, or you can actually get over the fact that it might feel weird, but you can actually speak out loud to this energy. Seeing, feeling, sensing, imagining that that space is being held for you. Right? So know that there are options, okay? Know that support can be there, even if we feel like it just isn't. So remember, come to this with kindness and compassion as best as you can. And if you don't feel that you can access this kindness or compassion, kindness and compassion to that. Right. Okay. So just take a deep breath again, sigh this out, shake this out, knowing you can come back to this, okay? Knowing that you can go to your journaling if some stuff came up from this that you didn't expect, okay? You've got this. But let's continue, okay? So, I'd just like to speak about how there's a necessary vetting process for discerning who is trustworthy and who is not in your circle, let's say. And a way that you can do this is, firstly, observing consistency, as in how do they act over time? Are they consistent in their behavior and values, or do they feel really two-faced and really tricky, right? Is there coherence with what they say and how they act? That's observing consistency. You can tune in if there's mutual confidentiality. Do they honor the boundaries of confidentiality that you have asked to be honored? Or is there this feeling that you actually don't trust saying something to them because you just feel like they'll just go talk to someone else about it, even if you have asked that they don't do that? People who respect your boundaries and your privacy are way more likely to hold space well and for you to feel safe for that space to be held by them, because there's not this niggling doubt like, are they just going to talk behind my back about this? Right? You don't want that. And same goes for you. Are you that kind of person? Can people trust you? Like this, it's applying to you as well, right? It's not just other, it's also self. Another way that you can vet the trustworthiness is to kind of test the waters a little bit. So you can share small things first, gauge their reaction, gauge how you feel intuitively in your system, and notice if they are supportive or if they start to twist and contort the information and paint you in a certain way, paint them in a certain way, and even twist it towards themselves, right? Like there's a way that you can test this without full on sharing the deepest, darkest secrets of your entire life, right? So test the waters. And look for emotional maturity. Look for people who can handle conflict directly and respectfully, and tend to avoid those who you've noticed speak about others disrespectfully, who you've noticed might even be toxic gossiping. So, this stuff is highly, what's what I'm looking for? Like, kind of common sense in some way, but also it's intuitive. So look for those 4 pointers. And remember, this goes for you too. Do you want to be someone where you're consistent, you say what you mean and mean what you say, you can respect the confidentiality wishes of another and their boundaries, that you can not slip into rescuer or try to paint the situation in a particular way and speak about yourself when really they're just asking for a listener? And are you able to cultivate emotional maturity, and can you hold conflicts well, or do you speak about others disrespectfully? So, as within, so without. Moving on to this final little bit that I want to, second, what is that? Penultimate, the second last thing that I want to speak to. Why is it that we have this whole complex that if we air grievances, that will accrue bad karma? Well, there's a lot of cultural conditioning, especially around karma, and it can instill this fear of authentic expression. There's a lot of cultural conditioning as well around the whole emotion of anger. That it's bad, it's wrong, and that you're a bad person if you're an angry person or if anger moves through your system. And so this builds a lot of shame. Like, we're made to feel shameful about a really powerful force that lives and breathes through us in response to boundaries being violated, in response to our energy being drained, in response to disrespect, right? And so anger is a superpower when it's not vilified, and when we don't vilify it, and when we can harness it constructively. Because there are two sides of the coin, anger can also be entirely destructive. But a lot of the time, that's the intention that is framing the anger, that is imbued in the anger, right? And so, yeah, there's a lot of like fear porning a lot of the time around bad karma. And it has been a very real thing, right? Like bad karma, sure, that's valid. But it has and can be weaponized as a concept to deter us from speaking truth, from airing out something that is alive within our system. But actually, what isn't often spoken to is how constructive processing can generate healthy, good, solid karma by fostering growth and emotional maturity and emotional health. So just be aware of that. Be aware of things being weaponized. Be aware of even anger being vilified and condemned. Even if you have noticed that that's a story in your own system, if you feel that it is bad if you feel angry, it is wrong. Okay, just notice that. Know that that isn't yours a lot of the time. That's not your story. That's what was given to you. Anger, when properly channeled, can be a force of transformation. It's linked to our vital, creative, sexual energy and can empower us to create the healthy boundaries, to protect ourselves, to protect another, and to demand change, right? Passion and anger influence our capacity to own who we are and take space in creation, right? Not sink and dissolve into the background and harmonize with everyone else and God forbid I be seen, right? And so if we can harness these emotions skillfully, then we command respect in our own system. Like we respect ourselves because we're not getting walked over and we're not just being immature and spreading gossip, right? But if we do suppress it, then that can really lead to a loss of our personal power. On a very physical, biological level, the throat is biologically almost exactly the same as the inside of the female yoni, that channel, so to speak. It like looks almost exactly the same. I don't know if there's similarity with the actual male-bodied anatomy. There might be, but the point is that the reason why I'm speaking to that is on a physical level, like there is similarity there, but on an energetic level, there is a similar, like if you can access and process those deep root sacral emotions, then that polarity balances out with the throat. Okay, so if you can be able to have the confidence and the power and the integrity and the respect to process and share those emotions, then you are simultaneously opening and clearing your throat chakra, your throat, which is the seat of your soul's divine blueprint, your personal medicine, your soul's path, whatever words resonate with you. So whilst I haven't formulated this exactly super explicitly, just know that there is a link there. Okay, maybe it could be another video for another time. But yeah, so it's actually quite virtuous, okay, to confront destructive individuals by airing our grievances and facing the shadows, okay? Standing up for ourselves is virtuous, right? There's a righteousness that comes with that, which is healthy. How is it useful for anyone if we're just doormats and we just get walked over and trampled over and spoken down to and pushed around? Why are we enabling that behavior? And this is not to say that that's easy, and it's also not undermining the fact that there are some very real and intense victim-perpetrator dynamics, okay? But generally speaking, if we can stand up for ourselves and stand up to individuals who project their unresolved trauma and they shadow project onto us like crazy, like blaming us for their unresolved issues, right? If we can stand up for that, we're saying no to that toxicity for that toxicity to fester and spread through the community. And instead, we are planting a very beneficial, benevolent seed into that garden of our ecosystem, our collective ecosystem. And that seed can grow into strengthening communal bonds and creating a safe and respectful environment. Okay, so confronting those who perpetuate harm, even if it's friends who are super in the spreading of toxicity, they're just really in toxic gossip, like standing up for that is not vindictive. It's actually highly necessary for the well-being of the collective. If you can call yourself out on your bullshit, fantastic. But sometimes that's not possible because we all have blind spots. So that's why the more of us who are aware of this difference even between healthy venting and toxic gossip, the better we all are. Because mature communities thrive when we are all accountable and aware of the impact of our actions upon another. When we are aware that this thing can be a force of destruction or creation, depending on how we use it. So, to summarize a few of the key points that we've spoken about in this video, airing grievances is not about spreading negativity. It is about clearing space for growth, for healing, for learning, and for awareness. By processing our emotions within and with trusted friends and allies, we are feeding things that are open and constructive. We build strong, resilient bonds with our people, with the community, because we're bringing, we're not just leaking all our toxicity everywhere. Like it's actually, we're spreading good vibes to the community, right? That's how it ripples. We elevate ourselves, we can elevate another, and we are making a stand for that our light and our power and our heart should not and will not be trampled over or shadow projected upon or bitched about or betrayed, right? We can make a stand and honor ourselves without wishing ill of another, without spreading poisonous seeds, okay? May we embody this practice by being conscious of who we choose to speak about things to, who we choose to trust, who we hold space for, who we let others hold space for us, and approaching grievances and the stuck, uncomfortable crap in our system that we haven't processed with care, with kindness, with integrity. And in doing that, we realize that we're allowed to process our anger. We are allowed to process this funk and this anger towards a person, a group, an institution. If we have felt violated in some way, if we have felt betrayed in some way, misunderstood, we are allowed to process that because it's for the better good of all. It means that we rid ourselves of that heavy cloud, and so that when we go to hang out with people who we do care about, that we're not then tainting them, let's say, with that heavy cloud. May you come to this with kindness and as much self-compassion and compassion for the other as possible. Okay, because even the people we're angry at, like, let's not vilify them and think that they're just evil people. Like, they've also got their own stuff going on. Maybe they're doing their best. And so we don't emotionally bypass. F them. I'm so angry at them. And bless them, may they heal. Bless me, may I heal. Okay. So there's no script for this. Don't quote me on this. Like, maybe it's different for you. But the point is, I hope, clear about the difference between airing grievances and toxic gossip. Okay, I will leave it there. Bless you, dear friends, for hanging out with me on the internet. I hope this video was really useful for you. And if you feel that others would benefit from it, that you know, share it to your people. If you did like this video, hit that like button for me, hit that subscribe button for me if you haven't already subscribed, hit the notification bell so you know when I post new content, and stick around. We got some good stuff coming through on this channel, and thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.